Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Senel. I work with an organization called #Generation. We work on the intersections of issues related to human rights and technology. So, on the one hand, we look at how we can use technology, especially social media, to create conversations about human rights issues. Second of all, we also look at how human rights issues are embedded in technologies themselves. Maybe some of the work we do will be a little bit clearer as we talk. But I also want to thank IYAP for this opportunity to speak on their platform. Because of the COVID-19 pandemic, I've also been stuck home, like most of you, um, and and with basically I'm with my parents, my sister, and my dog, and we've been at home for the past few weeks, like most of you. But what I thought I could do is not talk too much about how to be more responsible, because there has been kind of a lot of conversation about that in terms of washing your hands, not staying out, and things like that. And I'm also not a public health professional. So what I thought I'll do is talk a little bit about technology and also the media, and think about things together about how we need to be a little bit more responsible in the ways we consume information in this time, especially during the time of this pandemic. So, I'll do this. I'll have this conversation in English because I noticed that in the top of my poster it said the medium is English. But I'm happy to interact if there are any questions in the form of comments or things like that in Sinhala as well. Unfortunately, my Tamil is not that great. But speaking of Tamil, I've been taking Tamil classes from my colleague using live stream, group of us. So that also speaks about the kind of things you can do during the time you're stuck at home as well. So the next few things are a couple of things that you can watch out for, that I think you can be a little bit more careful and critical about the way we consume news and information in these troubling, confined for all of us. So we've spoken about how to use the time while you're stuck at home. I've been using this time a little bit to get a lot of work done, to reflect, to read, to work out for the first time in a very long time. I've also trying to experiment with my face. I'm trying to grow a beard. I don't know if it's working or not, but I've been taking yoga classes and Tamil classes online as well. But I'm not going to speak too much about how you can use this time wisely, because I'm extremely conscious that my ability to do all of these things are also based on my privilege, that I don't have to worry about things like basic necessities. I don't have to worry too much about safety and so on, and job security and things like that. So I won't talk too much about that stuff, because that's really dependent on your circumstances in life. And there's and I don't want to kind of recommend that you about that make recommendations about how you use your time. But when we consume information and the media, like many of us, if not all of us do, I want to share a few tricks that we've learned by doing the type of work that we do. The first thing is that there is so much false news going around on social media, but even on the mainstream media and the press in these days. So we really need to be careful and critical of the type of information we consume. In the initial days of the pandemic, and this continues, there were so many conspiracy theories and kind of rumors about the origins of the virus, kind of who's plotting this. Is it global warfare? Are these some doctors that are trying to infect the rest of the world, and conspiracy theories like that? And a lot of these have now been proven to be false. So basically, if you I think all of us need to be really cautious about this kind of thing. If you see something, especially if it's in the form of a WhatsApp forward or a post that's getting shared a lot online, then be really critical about this kind of thing. Maybe take a couple of keywords in that, run a Google search, go to the news tab on your Google search, and see if this is actually legit. if some of the big media stations are covering this. This doesn't mean that everything big media stations say are not without their own interests and agendas and so on, but it just means that there is some kind of authority there. There is some kind of institution that we can hold accountable if something that someone says is wrong with one of these institutions. But if it's not someone that you can trust or someone that you can't believe, and they might not even be a real name or a real person, so then it's impossible to hold them accountable afterwards. Secondly, also be quite cautious about things like miracle cures, home remedies, even immunity boosters. Because from what we know from public health professionals, there's very little research and information that has gone into it. And some people have actually have also had really bad circumstances, faced really bad circumstances because of this kind of remedies. And as we know, one person in this country actually died because they tried out a home remedy. So be careful about the home remedies you try out. Obviously, if it's just fruits and vegetables and things like that that are just that we know are naturally healthy and so on, there is no harm in doing that. But I think we also just need to be aware and be cautious of these kind of miracle cures that are gonna make you immune to the virus overnight. We also need to be really careful about WhatsApp forwards. The source of a lot of these WhatsApp forwards are a friend of a friend of a friend. But this friend is usually not your friend's friend, not a friend of a friend who is actually sending you this content. It's basically it's being passed on from person to person to person from WhatsApp groups with 50, 60 people or close family networks, and they're just being forwarded. And sometimes when you ask people for more information about these things, they say it was just sent to them by a friend, and they say, I'm not sure about it. That's why I added forwarded as received at the bottom. Adding forwarded as received at the bottom of your WhatsApp message does not relieve you of any responsibility for the information that you share. I think all of us need to be really careful about the kind of information that we share, that we forward with our friends, family, and other networks. Because it's a time when everyone's already scared, insecure, and at home, and you shouldn't use this time to propagate things that might not be true. So even if you're not a little bit unsure about something, my recommendation is that you shouldn't share it. Just check your sources. Go to sources that might be legitimate. The government, for example, the Health Promotion Bureau of the government. If there's any information that they've put out, or the WHO, or a global institution like the WHO, which looks into this crisis situation, take those sources as credible. Another simple but important one is also to check the date of news stories, even from mainstream media stations, because often things get shared now that are actually really old. For example, things related to the SARS pandemic, or things that shared in the early 2000s, for example. There was a story going around recently with the head of the WHO saying Sri Lanka's medical system is one of the best in the world. And this is a true news story. This is a statement that was actually made, but many years ago. So in this context, it's not accurate information to share it in this context, because it's misrepresenting something that's happening in this context if it was shared many years ago. We call this kind of information malinformation because it's not false. It's actually true, but it's just taken out of context. Speaking of WHO, another very important thing is also that just because someone's institutional logo is there, it doesn't mean that that institution actually said it. For example, a lot of us got a poster with the logo of the WHO saying you shouldn't eat bakery goods, and the WHO suggests this. But the WHO soon clarified that this was not true, and it originated in some WhatsApp groups. So anyone, as you know, can edit in a logo of any institution very carefully. So if you want verified information, go to the verified social media pages or websites and check this information out. The verified ticks at the bottom of Facebook pages and so on might be useful when identifying the actual pages. You can also check out the comment sections of a lot of these posts, because people who might know the accurate information might actually use these sections to critique what's happening. You can also check out fact checkers. There's few fact checking organizations like the AFP, Fact Crescendo, and Watchdog. And some of you might already be using these websites and apps and so on. And check these out to access verified information as well. Finally, if you also see hate speech and false news and so on that is getting a lot of traction, or if you just see it on your own, kind of if someone forwards it to your WhatsApp, or if it's on your Facebook live stream, you can also send it across to hashtag generation. We can do a small investigation and share it with social media companies as well. I also want to say a little bit about the sharing about racism and hate speech at this time as well. Now, as you know, there is so much, there's regulations imposed by the government about restrictions in travel and so on. And many of us cooperate with these, but some people don't. Some people don't cooperate with the government, and that's wrong. And what has been happening online often is that there are videos and images of such people that surface online, and these people are critiqued. Now there is a big kind of ethical discussion as well about if it's okay to share images of private individuals, but I won't get into that. My question is more question of reality that often if such an individual is an individual belonging to the majority community, and this applies to Sri Lanka but also different other countries as well, then often that individual is critiqued, and their action is critiqued. But if that individual belongs to a minority community, there is a tendency that the whole community is penalized and targeted and attacked for the action of one person, which means that if a member of the majority community represents themselves, an individual of a minority community have to kind of represent their whole community. This is not only true for Sri Lanka. I spent 1 year in the UK last year doing some studies, and it was kind of the same. If a white person makes some mistake and breaks the law, then often they're treated as an individual. I'm making a big generalization, but this is sometimes in the mainstream social media and the press. They're treated as an individual. Their action is critiqued. Someone who is, for example, of South Asian, East Asian background, of African descent and so on, if they make a mistake, then sometimes their whole community is held accountable to the action of this one person. This is kind of how our brain sometimes makes decisions by making generalizations. So we really need to be more cautious about this kind of thing and not let that kind of thinking overtake our own judgment. Um, this also applies to the mainstream media. As we know, it not only applies to social media, but the mainstream media sometimes in this country can also be extremely problematic. So even if you listen to the mainstream press, the mainstream news, your primetime news bulletins, just be a little bit critical about what they say. Think a little bit about what the agendas of these institutions might be, because often they're also owned and led by people with interests, with political interests, economic interests, and so on. And this is across the political spectrum. So be a little bit more conscious and critical about how you consume information. Because when people are already scared, people are looking for ways to abuse this time and kind of use it for their own benefit. Also follow news that's not related directly to COVID, because people might be using this time when we are distracted and when we feel unsafe to just get other things that they wanted to have gotten done. Think of who might be getting granted bail at this time, what pardons are given by the government, and so on. Just be a little bit alert about what is happening in the country at the moment. um, Also be just grateful for all the people that are working really hard to keep you safe. And sometimes the best thing that you can do to support all of this is to just stay at home, wash your hands, wear a mask even if you have to go out for a little bit to meet your children guy, and just be careful. Maybe there are other things that you can do by making a donation, maybe supporting people in your neighborhood who might be affected, whose circumstances might be worse off than yours, and sometimes just consuming less, or even just supporting vendors in your neighborhood whose businesses or enterprises may also have been affected by all of this. Um, yeah, those are just some thoughts that I wanted to use this time to share with you. I think this is a confusing time for all of us. Sometimes it feels like it's out of a movie, and it's a bit scary as well. But it's important that we know that we are kind of in this together. All of us are facing this, and you not let people use this time to get the best of ourselves and bring out kind of the worst parts of our emotions. And that's kind of for me the most important thing, because we are separate. We are all in our own houses, we are all in our own places of residence, but that we are in this together. So separate but together, alone but together, and that we are kind of in this situation together, and that we'll get over this. And that once we come out of it, that we will still move on to a world that's a little bit more just. Because we've spoken a little bit about how the virus doesn't discriminate based on class, based on gender, and based on, for example, ethnicity and so on. But the society in which this virus is spreading is discriminatory, is highly unequal. And this virus has made that is even more clear than before. So we need to do a lot more to now. I think we understand a little bit that we need to do things to change this inequality and this problematic injustice in the world that we live in. Um, those are just some thoughts that I wanted to use this time to share. I also want to thank IYAP for giving me this time, giving others this time as well. I've been involved with IYAP from the very beginning, from the time IYAP started, and now it's grown to be a big organization in the country. And that for me is very inspiring. The work you do is very inspiring as well. So thank you again for having me, and I hope everyone takes care of themselves and their loved ones. Thank you.